This is the Solid Signal podcast for the week of February 13th, 2023. And first of all, I'm recording this on the day after Super Bowl Sunday, so I don't want to give a whole lot of spoilers, but I will say it was an interesting game. Came down to the final seconds, and I congratulate the winning team. How's that for a spoiler-free experience for the Super Bowl? The subject of this week's podcast is a little bit different because usually when it comes to streaming stuff, I reserve that for the Streaming Saturday article that I write at the Solid Signal blog, blog.solidsignal.com, if you haven't checked it out. But this week, I read something this morning that I felt like it couldn't wait. It couldn't, by the time Saturday rolled around, it was going to be old news, and I thought, well, okay, maybe I could write an article about it. Or I thought maybe I'd do a podcast, and I thought a podcast would be kind of a fun thing to do this time around and reach a different kind of audience. What I read was that Peacock will be discontinuing its free service for Comcast subscribers in the next 6 months or so. And let me back up a little bit. Peacock is owned by NBC Universal. NBC Universal is owned by Comcast. Comcast is also a cable company that operates the Xfinity cable service. Just kind of set that stage. And when Peacock launched, one of the things that was really kind of a selling point was that the premium version, which was basically you could get anything but you had to have ads, was free for Comcast Xfinity subscribers. And that seemed like a pretty decent benefit. Maybe not enough to make you switch, but still a pretty decent benefit and something to talk about. Well, that's changing. For whatever reason, Comcast is discontinuing this benefit for Xfinity subscribers. They say there will still be some sort of discount in the future. They haven't said what that is yet. So we have to assume at this point that Xfinity subscribers who want Peacock are going to be paying the same $4.99 a month that other subscribers pay. That doesn't sound like a whole lot, and even the commercial-free experience isn't that much. It's also been said in other places that it is expected, though not announced yet, that Comcast will be discontinuing the completely free version of Peacock, which it basically gives you a limited number of things to watch, and all have commercials. You don't get all of The Office, for example, and you don't tend to get the movies. All of this kind of signals a sea change at Peacock, and you have to wonder why. Peacock hasn't exactly been the greatest success. They started, they had a lot of bad luck. Peacock was going to launch in the summer of 2020 with the 2020 Summer Olympics, and as we all know, those did not happen at that time, and so they really launched with not the same amount of content that they hoped to launch with. That was something to consider. Also, at that time, Peacock was sort of it was seen as a contrasting service, sort of almost a way for NBC to distance itself from Hulu, which is they had originally started, and had since the control of it had turned over to Disney. So, Peacock was going to be a whole new start for them. There were a lot of problems, and even the name Peacock was not completely well received. Because even though that is their logo, it's just, people don't necessarily associate that with NBC. It just doesn't kind of resonate with the younger people, who are the people who tend to get streaming. It's been an uphill battle for Peacock the last 2.5 years, and the reason is content. For the most part, the content on Peacock has not been that great. There have been some Universal movies that were available on Peacock for the first 4 or 5 months, and then they moved over to Prime Video or whatever. But most of these have not been must-see. I speak, for example, of Jurassic World Dominion, which kind of underperformed, and people were not super impressed with it. And so people were willing to wait or just rent so that they could not sign up for Peacock. A lot of folks kind of get down on Peacock, and I tend to not. I mean, I tend to be a lot harsher toward HBO Max, which has fallen so far in the last 6 to 9 months. It used to be a really true premium app and has fallen so far. But understanding that, it was a very expensive app to create and that they were not making that money back, something had to change. But Peacock has never really been a true performer. And so the idea of taking away the free access to it seems a little bit weird. Now, if you're a bean counter, you could say, oh, we could make a lot more money if we didn't give it away for free. But the truth is that converting people from the free tier to a paid tier is always a very dicey proposition, and you're never going to capture all of them. And in fact, usually when you try to make somebody pay for something that they used to get for free, you get relatively small uptake. So the benefit of going to a purely paid experience is not as great as you think. And I don't know why it's happening other than let's just hope that kind of new folks at Peacock are thinking about a new way of using the app and having the app, and that it's going to maybe kind of evolve into more of a premium streamer as opposed to something like, Tubi or whatever that has always been advertiser supported. So what really makes me think that Peacock may be contemplating a move into a more premium space is that the release of Poker Face. Now, Poker Face has been a moderate success so far as we can see, helmed by Rian Johnson, who's enjoying a lot of success for the Knives Out and Glass Onion films, and starring Natasha Lyonne, who is always entertaining. It shows a little bit of a throwback to shows like Columbo and Mannix, but kind of twisted around for a current generation, and it's a lot of fun to watch, honestly. But is it enough to base an entire premium channel on? No. And I think that there are enough people who are happy just waiting for that show to be available on other platforms as opposed to going to Peacock to get it. But it could be the very first start. Let's remember that Netflix's very first original programming, called Lilyhammer, was not very good, not very well received, and in fact is completely forgotten today. And now Netflix is one of the largest producers of original programming, and it all started with one not very well received show. I'm going to give a nickel's worth of free advice to the folks at Peacock who I am assuming are intently listening to this podcast. The problem isn't just your programming. I think that's a big part of it, but a bigger problem in a lot of ways is your app. Your app is not that good. It's hard to navigate, and this is true of any app that does this. The idea that you hover over something and that tile gets bigger and starts playing audio, this is a mistake. This is dumb. When I'm looking at stuff, when I have apps that do that, I look faster. I get out of that app faster because I don't ever want the audio to start. And you can't turn it off. And this is one of the big annoyances. I don't know anybody who likes this, but between that and the poor navigation and the way that stuff is put together, and at least to my experience, a lot, I haven't found a single title in HDR or Dolby Vision on Peacock. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right places. But it seems like the technology just isn't as good. For a while, I had, and a lot of people had problems even loading the app reliably, but they seem to have fixed that. But get your tech under control, come up with a better way of navigating the app, whatever that takes, and then start providing content that people really want to see. Look at the example of Apple TV. When Apple TV Plus launched, what a mess. Let's be very honest with you there. It's just one of those things. I mean, you didn't know which was Apple TV Plus content because it was all mingled into one Apple TV app with other content in there. There wasn't a whole lot of content to be found, and most of it wasn't very good or very enticing. And even though the app itself was free for a very long time, I personally found myself not using it because there was just no reason to. And Apple kept it free much longer than they intended to, and they kept it free until they had something worth paying for. And let me say that although I'm personally not the biggest Ted Lasso fan for a lot of reasons, it is a very well-made show, and a lot of people do like it. I get that. But Apple waited until Tad Lasso was a bona fide hit, and they made sure that people had the opportunity to see it. And then they started coming out with even better stuff and more buzzworthy stuff. And this is mostly because Apple was able to throw a lot of money at this app without worrying about it. And now they're beginning to see where, okay, they made it a paid app and then they raised the price and nobody is complaining. And not surprising because it's really turned into a better experience. It's easier to know what the content is. There is a lot of better content. This is how you do it, Peacock. You create a better app experience, you create content that people want to watch, and then you charge for it. You don't stop giving away your content when there's nothing to watch. It's moves like this that make me wonder because, let's be honest, folks, I am one podcaster with a fairly modest kind of following, and that's all I am. I'm not like the best broadcast executive in the world, and even I can see this. And when something just seems like such a common sense answer to something, well, either there's something that the public just doesn't know, which is possible, or the people at the top really should be changed out into people who know what they're doing and want to really make something succeed instead of perhaps padding their own wallets or doing something that is conventional for the sake of doing something conventional. Anyway, that's about it for the rant about Peacock this week. If you like this kind of content, like, subscribe, and leave a comment anywhere that you get this podcast, because those things make me look good to my boss, and it also tells me that you do want to hear more about what's being said and done out there and the kind of mix of stuff that I do. I do a lot of different content, and I try to mix it up every week. And I also try to avoid the podcast voice. You know, this podcast voice that says, oh, I'm whispering everything. I try to avoid that because I personally think that's kind of annoying. Tell me what you like, though, and I will do content based on that. I am here to serve. That's it for the Solid Signal podcast. I thank you as always. And do me a favor, shop at our sponsor, solidsignal.com. Solidsignal.com, the place where you can find everything to live your best digital life. And 40,000 parts, many of which you will not find anywhere else, at the best prices and with the best customer service, because unlike other websites, we at solidsignal.com do actually answer the phone. Call us at 888-233-7563. Meanwhile, you all have a great week, and I'll talk to you again next week.